So we've been we beat this dead horse enough, and we're now getting to our main entree tonight on Recording in Progress. And I'm gonna show you a teaser video from somebody else before we get into talking about it, because it's kind of getting into an idea of where we're all going in the future.
They say that if a product is free, then you're the real product. It's not
Yep.
paranoia, it's in the terms of service.
Yep.
When you give your information to a company like Google or Facebook, you're giving it to the government. With just one decision, the livelihoods of thousands were put immediately into jeopardy.
Yep.
When it comes to a service like PayPal, they can ban you for any reason. The problem with that is that it ends up like being banned from your bank. Many of the social media platforms that we use every single day have no sort of accountability whatsoever. It took a second massive data leak that made Google finally discontinue Google+. Social media has become increasingly intertwined throughout many of our lives in the past couple of decades. While many of us would have a hard time living without a car, many of us would also have an even harder time living without social media. Websites like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and others have become more than just a way to connect to relatives or old friends. For some, it's allowed us to gain an audience for our creative works. For others, it's become integral to our jobs and careers. However, in the past couple of years, I've noticed a very worrying trend among the big social media players. While virtually all of them offer their services for free, it's becoming increasingly clear that there's nothing you can get without a cost. And the cost of some of these social media platforms are steep. The things that I've discovered about many of these platforms in my research and over the years legitimately does frighten me. And I say that as someone who has built a career through social media. These things need to be brought to the public in a clear, concise manner. Like a democracy is the rule of the people, technocracy is the rule of technology. And make no mistake, the social media platforms do control much of our lives, whether we know it or not, whether we accept it or not. And unlike actual politicians or leaders of a country, the leaders of these social media platforms are often left without accountability.
Yep. Facebook is not free. It's very expensive.
And
Very expensive.
it's the opposite of free. We're the product, but we don't get paid for being the product.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, you pay for it with something much more important: your privacy.
Yeah.
And security.
So there's been a lot of discussion on this show and others about the weird, almost conspiracy-like pattern of deplatforming that's been going on. So I'm going to start off with a story about a death metal label being shut down.
Oh. Here we go. I thought we were on Twitter. Okay.
No. This comes first, because this is the opener. It starts the conversation. Death metal label shut down after PayPal credit processors pull out due to Department of Justice FDIC initiative. Now this is from January 1 of this year. A wide-sweeping initiative from the United States Department of Justice back in 2013 called Operation Chokepoint was initially designed to curb payment processors for quote-unquote terrorist activities, quote-unquote fraudulent purchases, and money laundering. However, according to one record label owner, the banks who have been in the news for demonetizing and deplatforming legitimate businesses over the last few months are doing so at the behest of those overseeing Operation Chokepoint. Now, for those who may be aware of what Operation Chokepoint is, the Trump administration, through the Department of Justice, issued a executive order to say, we're not doing this anymore. But there is evidence, not necessarily fire evidence, but there's definitely smoke evidence to suggest that various government entities are continuing to perform the procedures and processes of Operation Chokepoint. So there are a lot of people who are government employees who are not doing what the government wants them to do. Jim and I, we make fun of people who make fun of the Orange Man, but we're not fans of the Orange Man or his politics. But we're kind of going to go down a rabbit hole where we're going to explore why, no, if you're in government, you need to follow what the law says. And if you don't like what the law says and you're in government, you need to do your job as a citizen in demand for change in the laws, or which may include you protesting by saying, I'm stepping down from the government because the government is doing shady things. It started with a Kotaku in Action thread, which notes that the death metal, black metal record label has shut down in the wake of PayPal pulling out support for processing purchases, along with creditors at Visa, MasterCard, because the company was labeled as high risk for promoting hatred and promoting violence and promoting hate speech. In the case of LG Records, a label that has hosted all sorts of death metal music since 1996, their closure comes from the inability to sign with normal credit processors due to being high risk. There are also high-risk credit processors, but it's expensive, unreliable, and comes with no guarantees, which makes it untenable for most normal businesses. In other words, if you have a business and you're taking people's money, you need to have access to a thing called banks. And there's a thing called civil rights laws that say, no, really, people need access to banks. LG Records owner Rob told the outlet deathmetal.org in a piece published on their December 17th, 2018, that PayPal simply said he could no longer use their services following instigation from a website called Metal Sucks, which is headed up by Matt Goldberg and Ben Umanoff. Banks also abruptly cut ties with Rob as well, where he explained they didn't even have the business courtesy to inform me that they were going to cut ties. I came to the realization of this when I went to process an order and the response message was invalid merchant account. When I spoke to a representative, they informed me that they did not wish to work with me because I promoted hate. I did receive a letter from them saying that they were going to end the business relationship. The date of termination was a day before the letter was written and a day before it was mailed. What a great banking service. This was a death blow at this point. I had no means to accept any form of payments aside from cash or money orders, but there's no way to survive in that business model. According to Rob, the record label had been classified as high risk by the banks and credit processors, which means that he was effectively blacklisted from the banking industry. In short, this meant that the only way to accept payments from customers was, as he mentioned, by a cash or money order. For online businesses, it's not possible to operate without some sort of banking institution or credit card processing, since all purchases are made electronically. Now, if you notice how the word high risk has been repeated over and over again, you want to know why that was repeated, Jim?
Why?
Because part of the government regulatory authority that the high risk comes from the post-financial crash back in 2007, some of those banking and regulatory reforms that allowed the government to step in with audits and pressure if banks were doing a lot of business with high-risk businesses to prevent contagion from affecting the broader economy. This also recently happened to Morbin Records. So there's two of these companies, as well as deathmetal.org, reported back on November 4th, 2018. PayPal informed Morbin Records that access to their PayPal account would be restricted due to content-related violations. They said violations were in relation to the record label publishing satanic death metal, and because of it has an affiliation with the Church of Satan. Instead of dropping the edgy comment, Morbin Records dropped PayPal. It's kind of weird how the Church of Satan has become a running theme here.
Yeah.
However, LG Records Rob told deathmetal.org that this kind of blacklisting isn't necessarily limited to just PayPal and creditors. According to Rob, this started with the DOJ's Operation Chokepoint and has been expanding ever since.
So wait, we're bringing back Satanic Panic? Is this what's happening?
Well, if you believe in Satan, you are high risk, according to the government.
Oof.
Which means the government could try to shut you out of the banking system, Jim, because they don't like your religion, which seems like that's a violation of your civil rights.
Man, I really wish the government was a private company so I could leave, because I don't like it.
When the processors will run a check on me and my business, it comes back as high risk and reputational risk. Some of the red flags come back as promoting hate speech, promoting rape, promoting violence, and promoting hatred. An absolute atrocious characterization and a very consistent way of fusing music band names, titles to an actual call to arms. The slightly veiled assertion is one that marks me as one who is inciting these actions. The overlords who wish to control what you can sell and what you can purchase, speaking with a few individuals in the banking system, underwriters, as well as other labels, I have one. They started with Operation Chokepoint from the DOJ to curtail predatory lending, which, like most rulings, has now expanded its tentacles. This is more true than you know. In recently unsealed documents from Operation Chokepoint Initiative, it was the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation officials who were determining who credit processors and banking institutions could do business with within the United States, or who U.S. bank processors could allow to use their services internationally, such as our good friend Sargon, it depends on the child of a cod. Or Sargon, white inwards, a cod. Forbes published an article on November 14th of 2018 detailing how the FDIC officials strong-armed banks into cutting off financial opportunities for businesses in order to get them to shut down, even if the businesses were completely legitimate. While there's no mention of PayPal in the unsealed PDF documents made available on October 12th, 2018, a transcript of the deposition from senior policy analyst at the FDIC, Artie Holyfield, explained how the initiative was used to bully and illegally choke off businesses within the U.S. Holyfield stated, the DOJ dubbed the project Operation Chokepoint, such as described by an oversight staff report. It was designed to choke out companies the administration, and this is the Obama administration, considered a high risk or otherwise objectionable.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that they are legal businesses, by denying these merchants access to banking and payment networks that every business needs to survive.
Looks like Broken Microphone knows how Mafia works. That is how Mafia works.
That is, in fact, how Mafia works.
Yep.
According to page 16 within the document, FBI officials, including Margette Segatelian and Michael Bernardino, worked with the Federal Trade Commission and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was put out there to protect you and certainly not to prevent you from having access to the financial system, on spearheading the idea of protecting consumers via lending cutoffs that would eventually become Operation Chokepoint. However, if the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is directly involved with the initiative, then it may impede the efforts for attorney Lior Lessel, who is filing a formal complaint with the FTC regarding PayPal and Patreon or antitrust violations. So the antitrust violations of Patreon and PayPal may be a direct result of government policy. On an upside, Republican Representative Blaine Luetkemeyer has been at the forefront of trying to get the lasting effects of Operation Chokepoint shut down. In an American Banker opinion piece published on October 24th, 2018, Luetkemeyer pointed out to an example of the FDIC putting pressure on a bank to shut down a legitimate business. In one example of blatant intimidation, a bank terminated its relationship with a legal business after threats from the FDIC. The bank eventually surrendered to pressure. When the bank was notified the FDIC of their decision, they admitted that a risk assessment showed the business posed no significant risk to the financial institution, including financial reputation and legal risk, yet still terminated the banking relationship. For years, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency officials have continually denied any wrongdoing. Yet in the newly unsealed documents, we see proof of a conscious decision to work in conjunction with the FDIC against payday lenders. These lenders were specifically targeted not based on evidence of wrongdoing, but based on personal beliefs of a decision to strongly suggest the banks re-evaluate their payday lending policy. So, have you ever used a payday lending service, Jim?
No, I'm not an idiot.
Here's something.
It could be useful for people who are really in the line, but don't. If you can't, don't.
Here's a common reason people use payday lending service. Payday lending services will often be the cheapest services for cashing checks. In some respects, they will even be cheaper than banks cashing checks by depositing them into your own bank account.
How so?
As in, they'll charge you less money.
Because usually my banks just let me do it. But then they charge you credit unions. No,
they charge you.
I use a credit union, and all they do is they just say, "Give us $25. We're going to hold on to it for the duration of your account."
Yeah, but for banks, not credit unions, they'll charge you monthly fees. They'll hold checks over a certain amount. They'll do a whole lot of other things. So it actually ends up working out not only cheaper, but people are getting their money fast. There are abuses in the payday lending system, but instead of fixing those, we just need to use how Mafia works tactics to shut those businesses down.
Yeah.
This would help explain why the credit card companies and even PayPal have been so mum about the reason behind so many of these bans. since credit companies and banks are not supposed to point the figure back at the DOJ or the FDIC for these bans. Especially since I seem to recall something in the Constitution that says Congress shall make no law. Let me read that again.
Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the
free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition their government for a redress of grievances.
Yeah. See, I knew that, and that's the reason why I knew that is because I used to be a Constitution licker. I used to have a pocket Constitution in my back pocket at all times, which now I consider akin to a dog holding its own leash in its mouth. This goes into further detail. Some have suggested that PayPal and the credit card companies are making these decisions based on an ideological impetus. However, we're seeing, according to the current evidence, it looks like these bans are coming down from high up in the government. In fact, on page 5 of the unsealed documents, it explicitly stated from the FDIC that if banks did not comply, someone would be fired. To quote from the deposition of Marvin Anthony Lowe, accordingly, in late 2010 or early 2001, the FDIC's senior Washington officials convened meetings of all the regional directors. The FDIC is divided into 7 regions. Each has a director in charge of exercising the FDIC's supervisory authority over each bank in his or her region. At this meeting, in which all of these regional directors or their designees were gathered, the senior deputy director for the Division of Supervision and Consumer Protection informed them that if an institution in their region was facilitating payday lending, the regional director should require that institution to submit a plan for exiting the business. These instructions the senior deputy conveyed came from the 6th floor, chairman of the senior leadership of the agency. At the meeting, the senior deputy director conveyed the following message. If a bank was found to be involved in payday lending, someone was going to be fired. Which is also contrary to how the union contracts that federal government employees work under works, which is kind of weird. Why nobody in the union flagged that? Why would nobody in the union flag a union-violating policy during the Obama administration? It really makes the synapses fire, doesn't it? Yeah, really makes you think. Yeah.
So essentially,
by the way, who are the biggest contributors to the presidential campaigns and senator campaigns and Congress campaigns of the Democratic Party?
The unions. The unions.
Really? You sure?
Essentially,
I thought it was like the good guys who, like the green energy companies and stuff. I thought it was just people who really believed in a dream.
Yeah.
Give money out of their own pockets.
So essentially, PayPal bans, the Patreon bans, and the credit card bans and the banking bans are all being passed down from the FDIC. And if the lenders, the creditors, or the banks don't comply, someone is going to be fired. All of Operation Chokepoint's activities were supposed to end back in August of 2017 after a letter was sent out by Bob Goodlate, the then chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives, which stated that the investigations relating to the operations are now over and that those initiatives should not be undertaken again. However, not all the operations cease. As has been pointed out into a piece by The Hill, the actual regulatory enforcement has come to an end via legislation. It would have to come to an end by legislation.
So
good.
There's this video that says that MasterCard is the final boss.
What was that?
There's a video that's linked in this thing called MasterCard is the final boss, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So MasterCard being the final boss, I don't know if that's necessarily true. I've been playing this wonderful... Hear me out, though. I've been playing this wonderful game called Smash Brothers Ultimate. Have you been familiarized with... I have.
Okay. I'm familiar with it.
Are you familiar with the adventure mode? With the storyline,
yes,
sort of?
Ish.
Okay. So the basic storyline of this, hear me out because it's important to the parallel, and it's really short. The story of Smash Bros. You can't really have a really deep, complex meaning going on in Smash Brothers, right? So the idea is like there's this golem who comes into the Smash world and just rounds up everybody and brainwashes them
to be like their little puppets, and then they fight you, right? And if you defeat them, then you basically earn that character, and then that character is now playable for you to play in all the other parts of the game. You have to earn that. First, you start out with Kirby, and then you get more along the way. But after you defeat the golem, it turns out there's it basically opens up a rift where another nasty golem, which is the black golem, kind of takes over. And now you have to not only defeat the other golem again, but you have to defeat both of them, because they basically they're basically working against each other, but at the same time with each other. So is MasterCard the final boss in this particular thing? Yes, but it is one. There is another one, and that is the tech giants.
Yep. So the tech giants are making decisions with the financial industry, but this may all be pushed by the government. So I'm going to give you an example of one of the people who's been deemed not advertiser friendly. I ran across this on my Twitter feed. It says, "Could someone at YouTube explain to me why my video critical of a woman who encourages the critically ill to drink poison, hydrogen peroxide, is deemed not advertiser friendly, but her original video where, among other things, she tells people how to concentrate hydrogen peroxide, which it makes it more poisonous, is okay?"
Yeah. So Miles Powers, for those of you who don't know, highly recommend that YouTube channel. It's fucking amazing. He recently did a series about Alex Jones's gay frogs and the science behind whether or not that's true or not. Highly recommend that. He does a lot of conspiracy theories, pseudoscience kind of debunking type stuff. You know, back in the day, what the skeptic community used to do, he still does.
Actually skeptical.
Yeah. He still does, and it's really good. But he's a chemist by profession. Yeah.
So, a guy on Twitter.
Miles Power. I keep saying his name wrong, and he gets offended when you do that. Sorry, Miles Power, not Powers.
So, there's a guy named Nick Mon who on Twitter, and that's the moment feed on Twitter. He kind of started putting together the pieces on this, and I actually pointed him towards Operation Chokepoint. And let's see here, find some of the good things here. Talked about the death metal one. So the attack on death metal music strangely started in August 2017, right after the Charlottesville incident. It also happened after Congress said to the government, federal executive branch, "Hey, you should stop doing that. That's not, constitutional or right."
It's kind of a coincidence.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's no connection. To Representative Blaine, if you want to know why H.R. 2706 died in the Senate, I'd ask the FDIC chairman, Jenna Williams, and Internal Director Martin J. Gundberg, along with Chad Davis, Trav Hill, and Charles Yee, 5 people with prior experience with the BHUA.
So here's in the moment one, there's a post that has a breakdown of some of the allegations that came out in the lawsuit. Later in April 2013, Joel Sweet, a Justice Department official heavily involved in the initiative, emailed senior officials at the FDIC, the FTC, and the CFB and other federal agencies with a simple and elegant idea about how to protect consumers from predatory lending, which was the impetus for Operation Chokepoint. And one of the banks had a visit from an FDIC regulator and said to him, asked him whether he was aware that his bank directors could be subject for criminal prosecution for doing business with improper people. So we have government officials going out to banks, and in turn, most likely going out to PayPal and Patreon and saying, "Listen, if you associate with Mr. It Depends on the Child, we're going to have to do some audits and probably take you to jail." And he actually quotes something that Jacqueline Hart from Patreon said: "Payment processing depends on our ability to use global payment networks, and they have rules for what they will process." And he's actually gone into some detail looking into, I think it's IMF or federal regulations from the United States that impact foreign credit reporting and banking and finance agencies. as well. There's a lot of extensive material. Can you post this link? I'm gonna
the Chokepoint Twitter.
I'm gonna repost it, like, to have you put it in the video so for people can read this for prosperity, because there's a lot of information on there.
You're sending me this on the recording? Okay. Yeah. I posted that.
Yeah, so definitely want to put that in the link because that's kind of serious. And he's been actually reaching out to members of Congress on Twitter to try to come up with some details on this. However, the last one of his Twitter links I linked here is somebody proposed a potential solution, though I'm not entirely sure if that potential solution is going to work. It may be possible to quickly resolve payment processing deplatforming for subscription services by directly contacting Stephen Square and Roger Hochschild. They are the CEOs of American Express and Discover. American Express and Discover are their own credit card network and credit card issuing bank. A deal could be struck where they issue cards directly through a subscription service website to new users, thus creating a secure processing chain insulated from deplatforming. This may not be your kill shot for solving the issue fast in a bare-bones manner, as Jordan Peterson sought to do. American Express and Discover have the most incentive to assist in this endeavor because they are the two smallest credit card networks in the U.S. market. They're always looking to expand at the expense of Visa and MasterCard. Based on recent reporting, it appears that the deplatforming fail point for these subscription services is stemming from the credit card network portion of the payment processing chain, specifically Visa and MasterCard and possibly Discover. So that's a possible future solution to get out of this mess, is to have actual credit card companies issuing their own payment processing chain directly to sites, though that again would basically say, okay, Jordan Peterson and friends, you have a special deal with American Express where they will process your payments for your fans. And I'll also repost that in the recording in progress thing, so you can add that one to the link so people can review it later. So we're right now looking at a situation where we don't have conclusive evidence yet, but we see patterns of similar behavior where the federal government targeted gun shops, they targeted strip clubs, they've targeted marijuana dispensaries with Operation Chokepoint, they've gone after death metal, they're likely going after Sargon of Akkad, they most likely went after Alex Jones. Yep. So the real question is, are these big tech companies, these big billionaires who have influenced government, are they responsible for why these unlawful decisions being made by executive branch officials acting outside of presidential jurisdiction and outside of congressional jurisdiction are making people unpersons in the global financial system?
Well, see, I'm slowly moving away from all of this stuff. I've kind of, this is going to be the last month for me on Patreon. I created my own website. Fortunately, the back end is with Stripe, which is probably even worse than PayPal. But see, there's nowhere else to go because you have PayPal, right? They're part of this too. PayPal, Stripe. I could use Bitcoin, but here's the problem with Bitcoin is that, you know, it's still attached to all of these big conglomerates and stuff like that, these banks, because
these banks are getting directives from the government,
right? And they're passing laws saying that, hey, even so, like if I go to Coinbase, which is like the big place to go to if I want to buy Bitcoins, I still have to use their banking system, and that's still a part of that giant network on top of that. Most, if not all of these things are slowly starting to be eaten away by these regulations saying, hey, if you want to buy Bitcoin with an ATM or buy Bitcoin with USD, you have to submit all the stuff. Even these kind of, under the radar kind of ATMs who are just like, yeah, just put money into the thing and we'll just send out a Bitcoin to whatever address you want. Now we're saying, no. You have to enter your bank account information. You have to enter your identification number, your driver's license number. You have to have your social security number. Even websites like I believe so I've been told. I haven't tried it out yet for sure. I couldn't be 100%. But I'm told that even Local Bitcoin, which is a service that says, hey, here's just a listing of people who have Bitcoins for sale. Hey, here's a list of people who want to buy Bitcoin. Figure it out yourself, is now starting to cramp down and say, no. To join the site, you have to put your information in, put your numbers in, blah, blah, blah. And you have to let us know who you're connecting to, or Jim, regulates it.
So, Jim, what is the only solution for somebody if the government is manipulating the financial system and preventing them from having a financial life? What is... I'm going to use the phrasing not ironically. What is the final solution to this sort of problem? It's political violence.
I believe The Onion was pimping a book about the solution. That's probably out of the realms. Definitely not advocating that. I don't know. I mean, the only thing that I could imagine is to send physical gold. Are we having to go back to this again?
You can't send physical gold, though, because that would make you, again, suspicious activity, and you're then avoiding federal regulations. Thus, that could be crime, and thus they'll investigate you. The only solution, if this path keeps happening without somebody in Congress stepping in to fix this, is there's going to be an uprising. Because if people can't live the way they choose to live and can't access capital markets, people are going to rise up.
Oh, no.
And Sargon will be the one saying, yes, I told you, gamers rise up. We're going to change the world. Here's an AK-47. Let's do it. I mean, I'm being a little hyperbolic with this, but the merger of this pop culture political war with actual political war, it's coming if we don't stop this.
Yeah.
The people who are saying they're part of Dumbledore's army are people out there who are saying, ooh, these evil hate mongers, we need to put a stop to them listening to their death metal music. We need to put a stop to that. So we're just going to shut down those music. I mean, sure, artistic freedom is supposed to be important to us, but it's only if it's art that we appreciate.
Yeah. There's going to have to be a brand new financial system that needs to be created, which, unfortunately, if we're living in the United States and we have legal tender laws, that's going to be really hard to do.
But
if you have Bitcoin, if you're going to have Bitcoin services, that's going to be really hard to do because, as I've stated before, all that stuff's still connected to those same industries.
Yep.
Jeez.
And these policies...
Broken. Stop trying to get me banned from YouTube.
But these policies were started in the Bush administration, intensified in the Obama administration, and the Trump administration has tried to put a stop to it, but it's still going. Because the people who are saying, hey, we're following the example of Harry Potter. That's the timeline we live in right now.
Oh, I'm sorry, you cut out. Were you saying that, like, what we should do is shit in pots and then use magic to make that shit disappear? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that's what the people who are trying to prevent us from accessing the financial system want us to do.
No.
I mean, I think that's the metaphor calling back on that earlier article.
Gamers rise up.
Gamers rise up, I guess.
Yeah, I've never. Oh, god damn it!
And by the way, when Jim and I came up with this podcast, I told him we're not going to get into politics most of the time, but this is kind of so important, and it's tied into so many stories on internet drama we've talked about.
You can't avoid it. You can't.
Yeah, we kind of had to delve in on this one.
Yeah.
And actually, I think at some point later, Jim, if we could actually just clip this part of the video up and post that might be a good idea.
Yeah. And by the way, I want to spend a little bit more time. I know I asked Brian Sovereign this a while ago, and I really need to dig through it before I leave Patreon because then I won't have access to all those Patreon content that he uploaded. But he ended up actually linking me to several devices for setting up like mesh networks that you can create. It's kind of the same ones that they use in China to kind of do things under the ground, underground. Maybe I should start looking into that and start working on getting people to start adapting it. But the problem is, if you're going to have a mesh network like that, you really have to have a local kind of network to kind of build upon. Otherwise, it's just kind of falling apart. And I only know a handful of libertarians here. Maybe I should start reaching out to the LP in Nevada and saying like, hey, this is something we really need to do now.
We need to do some things.
Yeah, we need to do some things. Get everybody who's in the LP of Nevada to stop, the dick waving about anarchy or minarchy, at every single stupid meeting, and start working on building some sort of mesh network, because this is not good. This is how Mafia needs to work now. It's not how it works, but this is how it needs to work. And one solution is definitely not subscribe to any kind of quote unquote mesh network that puts all of your information on a blockchain. That's a stupid idea. Anyone who offers that idea is stupid. And you need to tell them they're stupid to their stupid face. Don't put it on a blockchain. Holy shit, that's a stupid idea.
You mean put it on a blockchain so everybody on the chain can access it?
Well, you can have private. There's like blockchains that are privacy centric, like ZCash, which uses like ZK Snarks technology, and then you have like the Coinbase, crypto note. I think it's called crypto note based like Monero and Dash. But the problem is, if someone somehow gets access to your private key, then they have access to every single thing you did on the internet, which is stupid. And there's plenty of ways to do it, either straight up hacking your computer, or as we like to call it, rubber hose hacking, where someone actually physically comes to your house and beats the shit out of you until you give them that key.
Yeah. So that's our content for this week.
Yeah,
we kind of went heavy at the end of this show, and we and by we I mean everybody needs to figure out a plan on how to get through this. And first of the plan is we need to go to our Congress and say, no, really, this needs to stop.
yeah.
I don't care if there may be evil terrorists out there, or I don't care if there's this or that or the other thing. There needs to be some sort of oversight so people aren't using governmental policies that may have a reasonable motivation to deplatform people and prevent people from earning a living, and to prevent people from expressing their ideas on the internet. Even people in other countries.
Yep.
So that's it for Recording in Progress tonight. Click the like and subscribe button, hit the bell icon, join the Patreon while we still have one.
You're gonna still run that one. I'm.
Well, no. I like once I know that there's a better alternative, I'm gonna migrate to.
There really is none. I mean, like, unless you want to build one yourself, which is what I'm doing, but it's slow. And for the first bit of it, it's going to be like an honor system type thing where I'm just going to be releasing my Patreon only content up publicly, and then saying like, hey, this is a Patreon funded thing. Just pay me $1 a month and we're good.
Yeah. But I mean, eventually we're gonna have to do something else. We're gonna have to do something else. Like, once we get to that point, we're gonna and yeah, we should probably be a little less inside and snarky about the titles. We could probably work on that.
Well, I had zero time today to figure out what we were going to do, or this week as far as to do, and it's still fuck you, it's January. So I was just like, fuck you, it's January 2, Electric Boogaloo. I climbed out of bed and was like, I got to think of something. That's what it's got to be.
And also,
I did not even look at this Operation Chokepoint thing until I didn't even know it was going to be in the show notes until I scrolled down during the show.
And also, here's a little reality about our process. I come up with a whole bunch of ideas and I mix them together, and somehow there's always strands and threads that unite the ideas together.
Yeah.
It's not planned that way, it just happens.
So yeah, it'd be a good idea to probably
But yeah,
I guess some behind the scenes. Just at me anytime something happens, and just let me know where this is all connecting. Because sometimes I'm just too busy to look in this chat room. Sometimes, and you're the one that usually builds all the content for this stuff. Because I try to stay away from it. You're my window into this, so it's kind of helpful if you're to be like, hey, this is the theme that we're going with. That'll help for me to build.
Now, I do also want to give a little teaser to the folks who are in the chat room. We got some interesting content that's currently in production for the Lulberts that I'm going to be helping Jim with. Mm-hmm. We're going to be doing a little radio play. You'll find out more about that soon. Yep. I'm hoping you'll all be entertained by that.
Yep. And also, I'm going a very different direction with my show. If you could listen to the last episode of the Lulberts, which was mission accomplished. Even Artie Lang thinks you're a mess. I get into it at the very beginning of what we're doing in terms of the Lulberts and all of my content for that matter going forward. So, yep.
So, good night, everybody.
Yep. And normally I've been saying worms. I'm taking that back since the podcast that originally hosted it, it's pod faded. But because of the content of this episode, I'm going to go back to saying Hail Satan. Hail Satan.